For decades, the global system operated in a predictable pattern. The United States issued the directives. Canada gave a courteous nod of agreement. The border remained wide open. Oil streamed southward. Security guarantees moved northward. That was the American-led arrangement. But 48 hours ago, Mark Carney stepped onto a platform in Europe, and he didn't merely challenge that arrangement, he pronounced it finished. Facing the lenses with the world's top financial figures looking on, he stated plainly that the American order was over. No hesitation, no regret. He voiced what others only whispered. Under Donald Trump, the United States has ceased being an ally. It has become a danger. And if you believe Trump accepted that quietly, you clearly haven't followed events closely. The White House reply wasn't merely irritated, it was explosive. We're talking about warnings capable of wiping out Canada's economy in a single stroke. Here's the part the major outlets won't touch. Trump attempted to back Canada into a corner. Carney refused to flinch. And now, for the first time ever, Washington is discovering it may have driven its nearest partner straight toward its adversaries. Over the next few minutes, I'll guide you through the address that altered the course of events, the frantic response inside Trump's circle, and precisely why this clash will soon strike your household budget far harder than expected. Hold on tight. The North American partnership has just dissolved. So let's cut to the essentials. What really took place? 2 days back, at the Global Security Forum in Berlin, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney addressed the audience. Most anticipated the standard courteous Canadian remarks, the familiar script of friendship, joint heritage, the world's longest undefended frontier, all the customary pleasantries. Instead, Carney approached the lectern, set down his papers, and gave a 20-minute farewell to U.S. dominance. He stated unequivocally that Canada could no longer depend on the United States for economic viability or national defense. He described the present American leadership as erratic, frivolous, and a fundamental threat to worldwide stability. Pause on that phrase, fundamental threat. That's finance speak for an impending collapse. He unveiled a fresh policy framework labeled Northern Sovereignty. What does it involve? It signals that Canada is formally redirecting its energy supplies, critical minerals, and intelligence cooperation away from Washington and toward the European Union and Asia-Pacific nations. In essence, Carney informed the globe, we welcome commerce, but the United States no longer receives privileged treatment. Donald Trump's reaction came swiftly. It arrived quickly, and it arrived angrily. By 3 a.m., the posts began. Trump labeled Carney a betrayer of the continent. He branded him low-energy Mark. Then the warnings turned serious. Trump vowed to scrap the USMCA trade deal completely. He promised a blanket 25% tariff on every item crossing the northern frontier: vehicles, timber, steel, petroleum. He informed his base that Canada had knifed America in the back. But here's the stunning development. Normally, when a U.S. president issues threats toward Canada, the Canadian dollar plunges, Toronto's equity markets plunge into chaos, and Canadian officials hurry to Washington to make amends. None of that occurred this time. The Canadian dollar remained stable. Toronto's exchanges actually edged higher. Why? Because the international community recognizes something Trump has missed. The international community recognizes that Carney is not posturing. This was not a heated outburst. This was a deliberate separation. While Trump rages online, Carney is finalizing agreements that exclude the United States from tomorrow's economy. You're witnessing a textbook display of strategic positioning, and you're watching an American president grasp that his longtime target has begun striking back. I know what a portion of you are thinking. You're thinking, this is only words. They'll reconcile. They always reconcile. I want you to pay close attention. I'm about to present the evidence. I'm about to present the concrete numbers showing this isn't a temporary spat. This represents a fundamental realignment. Evidence item 1, the energy redirection. For generations, nearly 99% of Canada's petroleum exports traveled to a single destination, the United States. America held a virtual lock on Canadian energy. They purchased it at low cost, processed it, then sold products back. Examine the data from the past 6 months. Since Carney assumed office, permits for West Coast LNG facilities targeting Japan and South Korea have been accelerated at unprecedented pace. Meanwhile, southward pipeline volumes are being deliberately restricted. Last month, Carney's administration discreetly enacted a rule mandating strategic reserves for internal consumption. That may sound technical, it isn't. It provides Ottawa legal authority to reduce crude shipments to American Midwest refineries whenever national security requires it. Trump understands the implication. That's why he's rattled. If Carney closes that valve, gasoline prices across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan won't merely rise, they'll surge dramatically. Evidence item 2, the critical minerals exclusion. This matters most. This concerns the future. We're discussing lithium, cobalt, uranium, the materials essential for smartphones, combat aircraft, and electric vehicle batteries. The U.S. defense sector desperately requires these resources. They presumed Canada would supply them indefinitely, but observe what occurred in Berlin immediately following the address. The footage captured it. Carney left the platform and did not telephone Washington. He left the platform and greeted the German Chancellor and the Japanese Prime Minister. Within 2 hours, a joint announcement appeared, a multi-billion-dollar partnership to exploit the Ring of Fire mineral zone in northern Ontario. The participants, major German automakers and leading Japanese technology companies. Washington received no invitation. Carney is marketing the raw materials of the 21st century to America's rivals. He's informing Washington, if you want access to our resources, join the queue with everyone else. The special family rate is canceled. Evidence item 3, the Five Eyes slowdown. This development has intelligence agencies unsettled. For generations, Canada and the United States exchanged virtually everything: intelligence reports, surveillance data, satellite information. The integration was flawless. Information emerging from the Pentagon and confirmed by sources indicates that data transfers from Canada have dropped sharply. Carney's administration cites privacy risks tied to the current U.S. leadership's handling of information. But honestly, this is a deliberate pause. Canada is withholding its Arctic, Russian, and Chinese intelligence. Trump is operating with limited visibility in the far north, and he recognizes the disadvantage. Evidence item 4, the investment safeguard. This appears mundane, yet carries the greatest long-term risk for Trump. Over the past year, Carney's team has silently revised Canadian foreign investment statutes. They inserted a provision, Section 22, that empowers the government to veto any U.S. corporate acquisition if the acquiring entity maintains ties to politically unstable governments. It's a direct insult. They are categorizing Trump's America as politically unstable. They are applying the identical terminology the United States uses for unstable developing nations. When you combine these 4 pieces of evidence, what picture emerges? Not a nation trembling at tariff threats, a nation that has quietly constructed an exit strategy over the last 2 years. Carney isn't battling Trump through social media insults. He's battling him through supply networks, commercial agreements, and heavy industry commitments. And the alarming reality for the White House is that the strategy is succeeding. So why is Trump responding with such intensity? Why the furious all-caps messages? Why the border closure warnings? Because for the first time, Donald Trump faces an opponent he cannot intimidate. Trump's entire outlook rests on one premise: the United States is the strongest force present. When he shouts, others comply. When he threatens tariffs, others retreat. He believes raw bilateral power determines outcomes. I'm larger, therefore you obey. That approach succeeded against Mexico. It succeeded against certain European figures frightened of losing the American market. It is failing against Mark Carney, and that realization is infuriating him. You must grasp the psychological dimension. Trump requires adversaries. Conflict energizes him, but he requires adversaries who fight on his terms. He wants Carney to lose composure, to trade insults, to descend into personal attacks. If Carney enters that arena, Trump prevails because Trump dominates that space. Instead, Carney employs a far more effective tactic. He sidesteps the drama and targets the underlying structure. Trump rants about tariffs. Carney quietly finalizes an expanded trade pact with Britain. Trump mocks Carney's appearance. Carney posts an image of himself hiking in the Rockies, fit, composed, and occupied. Trump hints at withdrawing NATO obligations. Carney delivers remarks commending Europe's independent defense capabilities. Trump is losing grip because his methods belong to a previous era. He's attempting to choke Canada with economic pressure that no longer exists. Consider the current U.S. economy. It's vulnerable. Inflation is creeping upward again. Factories struggle to hire workers. The very last development American companies can afford is a trade conflict with their largest trading partner. Trump's own advisors understand this. Executives from Ford, General Motors, and Boeing are contacting the White House at this moment. They're sounding alarms. They're explaining, Mr. President, sealing the northern border is impossible. Our components arrive from there. Our aluminum arrives from there. If Canadian rail shipments halt, our assembly lines stop within days. Trump is cornered. He issued a threat. I will destroy Canada. Now he must follow through. But following through devastates his own economy. A 25% tariff on Canadian imports means Americans absorb the cost. Lumber prices climb, housing stalls, oil prices rise, gasoline spikes, food becomes more expensive. Carney understands this perfectly. He knows Trump is holding an armed explosive, and Carney stands calmly, watching to see whether Trump will actually detonate it on his own territory. That explains the escalation. Trump is attempting to frighten Carney into yielding before economic consequences become undeniable. He's deploying overwhelming force. But you cannot intimidate a former central banker. You cannot intimidate someone who navigated the global financial meltdown. Trump is swinging wildly. He's suggesting boycotts of Canadian maple syrup. He's floating travel restrictions. He grows more frantic with each passing hour. And the world notices. Beijing notices. Moscow notices. They observe an American president unable to manage his closest neighbor. They observe cracks in the armor. Every post Trump makes about Canada does not project power. It reveals that he has lost command of the alliance. It confirms that the American order is, in fact, finished, just as Carney declared. Because when you must threaten your closest partner with ruin simply to gain their attention, you are not leading. You are holding someone captive, and the captive has broken free. Let's examine Mark Carney himself. You must understand why this individual represents the ideal counter to Donald Trump. If Justin Trudeau was the progressive figure Trump enjoyed ridiculing, Carney is the disciplined expert Trump dreads. Carney is not a lifelong politician. He's a lethal professional in tailored clothing. He steered the Bank of Canada through the 2008 collapse. He guided the Bank of England through Brexit. He knows the weak points of the international financial architecture because he helped construct parts of it. Trump views trade as zero-sum. My victory requires your defeat. Carney views trade as an intricate network of risks and opportunities. Carney's approach is what scholars term middle power anchoring. The label sounds academic, but the tactic is straightforward street-level maneuvering. When you're smaller than the aggressor, you don't confront him solo. You bind yourself to 20 others. Carney is binding Canada's economy to Europe, Japan, South Korea, and rising markets. He is rendering Canada essential to everyone except the United States. He is effectively declaring, you cannot damage me without damaging Germany. You cannot damage me without damaging Japan. That degree of strategic depth caught the Trump administration unprepared. They anticipated passivity. They anticipated Canada would await approval. Instead, Carney behaves like a chief executive who discovers his primary vendor is collapsing. He is shifting direction. Notice his demeanor. He never raises his voice. He never attacks Trump personally. He treats Trump like a natural disaster, like a storm. You don't argue with a storm. You reinforce the structure, erect barriers, and relocate your critical assets to safer ground. That is northern sovereignty, relocating Canada's critical assets to safer ground. He frames the dispute as order versus disorder. Trump embodies disorder. Carney embodies order. And who finds that appealing? Capital does. Wall Street despises Trump's unpredictability. They value Carney's reliability. International investors see riots, threats, and volatility in the United States. Then they see Canada, Carney's Canada, and observe the rule of law, renewable energy, and a government that respects agreements. Carney is wagering that capital ultimately migrates towards safety. He is wagering that investment will flee the turbulence of MAGA America and settle in the calm of the North. It's an audacious wager. It's a risky wager, but it may be the only realistic option Canada possesses. He is effectively proclaiming economic sovereignty, not merely the political sovereignty already achieved long ago, but true economic autonomy. He is severing the final connection. And that explains why this moment feels profoundly different. That explains why historians will mark this week. Because for the first time, Canada is not requesting inclusion. Carney is constructing his own platform. So step back. Why should this concern you? Whether you're in Ohio, Texas, Florida, Manchester, or Melbourne, why does tension between Ottawa and Washington affect your daily life? Because this serves as the early warning signal. If the United States and Canada cannot preserve cooperation, if two nations sharing language, culture, and history cannot maintain an open frontier, then globalization has truly ended. We are moving toward a world of barriers. For you, that translates to inflation. Full stop. The North American economy functions as one integrated system. An automobile component crosses the border 7 times before final assembly. Cattle raised in Alberta are fattened in Nebraska and slaughtered in Ontario. If Carney and Trump fracture that system, everything costs more. Your vehicle, your home, your groceries. But the impact reaches beyond finances. This marks the dissolution of the Western Alliance as we've known it. If Canada no longer trusts the United States with its defense, why should Germany? Why should South Korea? Carney's actions grant other nations permission to disengage. He has demonstrated that rejecting Trump is survivable. He has shattered the myth of American invulnerability. We are witnessing the West fragmenting into smaller alignments. For ordinary Americans, this represents loss. You are losing your most reliable neighbor. You are losing the one country that consistently stood beside you. From Normandy's shores to Afghanistan's peaks, Canadians were present. Now Carney is saying, we'll see you down the road. The emotional weight of that shift is enormous. America is becoming isolated, a solitary, resentful, heavily armed island. For Canadians, this is the defining moment. Consumer prices will rise. The adjustment will hurt. But the alternative, yielding to Trump's impulses, becoming a dependent territory, was intolerable. Carney is requesting that his citizens accept temporary hardship in exchange for lasting independence. He is betting that Canadians possess the resolve to stand independently. So what comes next? What unfolds over the coming 30 days? 3 paths appear possible. Frankly, 2 of them are alarming. Path A, outright trade conflict. Trump carries out his promise. He enacts the 25% across-the-board tariff. Carney counters at once. He taxes American digital platforms. He restricts American dairy imports. He reduces oil shipments by 10%. Markets collapse. Border crossings freeze. Tractor trailers line up for 50 miles. The automotive sector grinds to a halt for weeks. Eventually, Congress or the judiciary intervenes to block Trump. But the harm is permanent. Trust evaporates forever. Path B, dangerous escalation, the grim scenario. Trump takes the rejection personally. He moves beyond tariffs. He deploys border agents to create deliberate delays. He charges Canada with permitting security threats. He militarizes the northern boundary. Carney retaliates by expelling U.S. law enforcement personnel from Canadian airports. He welcomes Chinese capital into Arctic facilities purely to needle Washington. Diplomatic ties collapse entirely. Embassies stand empty. We enter a Cold War dynamic with our neighbor. Path C, corporate intervention, the likeliest yet most cynical outcome. Wall Street, technology giants, and energy firms step in. They visit the White House and warn Trump, enough, you're destroying our earnings. Trump retreats publicly, claiming a small symbolic victory. Carney offers a courteous acknowledgement, but alters nothing. He continues redirecting partnerships. He continues strengthening European ties. The immediate crisis fades, but the relationship is finished. They remain under the same roof only until the arrangement expires. My instinct suggests a combination of A and B before we reach C. Trump rarely steps back. He intensifies. Anticipate harsher language. Anticipate personal attacks on Carney's family, heritage, and allegiance. Anticipate Carney becoming more reserved, more precise, and more unrelenting. Normally, leaders would reach for the secure line and de-escalate. That line is now disconnected. Carney is not awaiting contact. Trump is too proud to initiate it. We are observing the close of a historic chapter. The American order Carney pronounced deceased. He did not cause the death. He merely announced the official pronouncement. Donald Trump overreached with Canada. He assumed he was pressuring a subordinate. He discovered he was confronting an equal. Mark Carney has drawn a boundary in the snow. He has concluded that Canada will fare better facing the tempest alone than remaining aboard a foundering American vessel. The fallout from this choice will echo for generations. Your finances, your safety, and the global landscape have shifted. So I must ask, do you believe Carney is erring by challenging the bear? Or is he the sole leader courageous enough to state plainly what America has turned into? Is Canada justified in stepping away? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. Events are developing rapidly. The border situation could shift within the hour. Enable notifications and stay subscribed. You don't want to miss what comes next, because if you think the current tension is serious, wait until you see how China exploits this opening. I'll catch you in the next update.